Thank you, Abhijeet, for coming on today's episode of Mera Pehla Crore. And I'm really excited to have you here. And you have a really interesting life story from what I can understand from your LinkedIn. And I'm really eager to understand your story from your own, with like in your own words, so that we can inspire. Like I'm already inspired by your story, so I just want my audience to get inspired by it as well. And like, if you could introduce yourself in your own words, I think that would be a great place to start.
Thanks, Osama. I'm glad to be here.
My
And
pleasure.
so I have been an entrepreneur, and now I like to call myself a writer and someone who is sort of, I came across this really interesting word in French called flaneur, which means the person who's just observing life and doing things that he likes to
That's
do.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think Europeans have all these kinds of words for different
Yeah, हमारे यहाँ तो बेकार आदमी बोल
non-activities.
देंगे.
यहाँ पे तो like if I were to say this, they would be like, okay, you
Yeah,
go on, I'll do something useful in that. So
right.
yeah, I mean, I ran a company from 2010 to 2020. I bootstrapped it, started from scratch, built it, and then eventually sold it. And then I took a sabbatical, and these days I'm doing a bit of consulting, mainly focusing on writing, also a bit of individual content creation. So I am currently dipping my fingers into a lot of things. Until recently, I was also investing in startups. That is something I have paused. I'm not
Yeah,
currently doing it. But yeah, I have angel invested as well.
all right. And but from so I've had a similar start as yours journey. So I started my life with a market research organization, which is very close to a call center. So like we had graveyard shifts also. So I could completely relate to what you were talking about in one of your posts that you were working in a call center before you took the leap of faith. Like I See, I think call centers are a great place to start your career. If you don't have a direct job opportunity, it's better to sit at home than to work somewhere, regardless of what kind of work environment you might be working in. Because I've seen a lot of great people come out of call centers because of the grit that they teach you. You need to finish your work, you need to figure it out on your own. But like, I don't like the like actual graveyard mentality. Like all of the people like are just so pessimistic there. Like they're not very optimistic. So that's what made me want to like just jump out and get a head start in my career. What was that like for you? Like the leap of
So I
faith?
think I think maybe for you it was probably because you are far younger than
Yeah,
me, I can tell. So I guess
yeah,
for
yeah.
you it was probably just a few years ago, I guess, right?
Okay,
When you were working. For
yeah,
because I started back in 2004, right?
yeah.
That was when I
Long
think
back.
too long back, right? 2001 was when I think call centers were introduced in India,
Yeah,
and that's when these new companies were coming up. Raman Roy started Spectramind, which was acquired by
yeah.
Wipro. Then two ex-IBM executives, they left their job and they started Daksh. So that was like the golden phase of outsourcing.
Call centers.
That's when
Yeah,
call centers. That's when it all began. So my experience was completely opposite because when I
okay,
was there, people generally were very optimistic. They were full of energy, enthusiasm.
right.
Young college grads, they were coming on board and they used to pay well back then. Also, the entire environment, it was quite alien to Indians back then. Right? Today, you can see
Yeah,
all these, glass buildings, offices,
yeah.
those corporate environments, the cafeterias and all. These were
Yeah,
actually pioneered by call centers
right,
because we were serving Americans, right? So the
right.
entire environment was created in accordance with how it would be in an
True,
office in the US.
true,
So,
true.
in fact, I was in my first job. I was trained by an American. The soft
Yeah,
skills, the voice and accents, and that's
yeah,
where I learned a lot.
yeah.
Learned a lot about US and how things are there. So I think for me, it was quite a path-breaking experience, I would say, because I had good trainers and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I also got to learn on the side. I sort of, had enough
Right,
time to research on the side.
right.
Uh, I think for me, it helped a lot. For me, because I couldn't clear engineering, I tried even, after
Okay,
passing my 12th, I tried for 2 years for IIT JEE. I couldn't
right.
clear it.
Okay.
And so I think call centers came as a big rescue for me at that
Right.
low point. And from there, I think 2, 3 years, I think 3 to 4 years I worked there. And I also steadily moved up the ladder there. I started as an
Yeah.
agent, and then I became a quality analyst, then I became an
Right.
expert, then, all that thing. So it was a good phase for me, I would say.
100%. I completely agree with the fact that what you said, and I've said this in one of my podcasts before. I'll share that with you as well. It was with my first boss actually, who's the owner of the company where I worked in. So I think call center training is something that that should be made necessary for like majority of youth who don't have access to good education, like where they can speak fluently and like be taught. I think I was like I think half of the man that I am today in professionally is because of the training, 15 to 20-day training that I got. But I did not get that kind of training with anywhere that I went after that. Because
Hmm.
I think, just like you said, that they are so thorough in their SOPs and their like mindset that you need to understand what's going on in the people in the minds of the US, like people in US and people in UK and people in Australia, and how you should speak. And so little things such as like smile when you talk on the phone, like
Hmm.
just that rule would make a difference. And I have noticed it in the past, like just on this podcast itself, like so many people have come and told me that, oh, we really like how you smile and speak. And like it's so strange that anyone can smile, right? That should not be a differentiator. Like
Hmm.
and I think that just comes from my training, like from almost 9, 10 years ago when I started working.
Yeah, I
I
mean
just have
they focus heavily on the soft
soft
skills, and
skills.
that
Exactly.
soft skills training is not a part of curriculum, the training curriculum at Indian
Yeah.
offices. Maybe it is now, but generally it isn't. And there in the
It's not.
US, there in the US, it's people used to focus on that heavily, at least back
Yeah.
then. So I think that really helped. It helps. I was coming from a small town, and I didn't know any of that shit. So it was
Yeah.
like quite
Exactly.
a revelation for me. Empathy,
Yeah.
connecting with someone else, smiling, as you mentioned, all those things.
Yeah.
So, and now in the age of AI, people are realizing that this is what that will
Yeah.
help you differentiate. Right.
Exactly.
Eventually, that's when all the tech stuff is being done by AI. How will you stand out? Right. So I
Yeah.
think people soft skill is coming back in vogue now, so to speak.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. That's why I'm really loving this journey with my podcast, because no, it's AI proof. Nobody can replicate me as a person. Like they can replicate my voice, they can replicate my like like visuals, but my appearance, but they can't replicate my story. They can't replicate my personality. They can't replicate the stories of my guests. They can't replicate the personalities of my guests. And so
Hmm.
I think that's beautiful, and that's what I'm really excited about of building this very thoroughly in the for the future, because I don't think this is going anywhere. Like
Hmm.
this is going to be the next mainstream media, inshallah, sometime point of the line. And but coming back to your story, what I would like to understand about is, where did you go to your college? Like you mentioned DU, right?
No, so I didn't actually go to a college. I did it through correspondence. So DU's open school.
Okay,
So I
while you were
did
working.
I while I was working, I did my BA in political science from there, and
Got it.
so I was able to pass out from there, got a certificate and all.
Got it.
So sort of a trained or untrained graduate.
Got it.
So yeah.
Got it. But just trying to wrap, like cover up as much of your story as I can. So you started in 2010, if I'm not wrong, and you started with a
I no
blog.
no so no I started in working in call centers around 2004, and then 2008 is when I quit my job.
Okay.
2008 April is when I quit my job, and that's when I started a personal blog.
Okay.
And then, I worked on it for a few months, and then I realized that, it was making money, but not enough for me
Okay.
to sustain my expenses. And that's when I started working for, other people. I started freelance writing. I also started doing some affiliate marketing and all. So I, sort of dabbled around for the next 2 years. And I was able to build a cushion, funds and all. And that's when I realized that I should build a long-term asset. And
Right.
since tech writing was something that I was able to do, I knew, and writing is something that I have always been passionate about, even in my school life.
Right.
I was really really good at writing and language and all that. So, that sort of came naturally to me. So that's when I decided to start Guiding Tech, which was the tech blog I built.
Right.
So in 2010, I started that. But
Okay.
but I had already been sort of on my own 2 years earlier than that.
Right. So in those 2 years, like at that point of time, like how much money would you be in, like, would you be able to say that you can make with blogging in your initial days for a beginner who wish to start today?
So I think it will be so when I started Jeet Blog, which was the name of my personal blog, uh, I was making a few $1,000s a month, and it was
Okay.
almost it hadn't reached my call center salary, but it was getting there.
Okay.
And so yeah, and then I don't know how it is now, but back then, if your blog was good and if you were able to bring traffic, so then you would be able to make money through AdSense and all that stuff. So I was making a few $1,000s. The only problem was that the for any content asset, be it a blog or today be it an Instagram account, a YouTube account, uh, initially you could get traffic bursts, but the consistency takes a while. The content
Yeah.
repository needs to be made, and once you have a bunch of videos or
Yeah.
content for like 2 3 years, that's when the consistent income starts
Right.
happening.
Yeah.
So I think that obviously I realized that that's going to take a lot of time, and I didn't have that time. So I decided to instead focus on working for other people for a while,
Got it. And that helped you like manage your expenses for a while.
manage my expenses, and also sort of build a war chest for when I can start my business. Because when I started Guiding Tech in 2010, after that, I knew that I'm not going to make any money for 2 3 years, but I had made that money so that I can survive for those 2 3 years.
Right, makes sense. I think that's a good calculated risk that you took. And
Hmm.
uh, so you started off with a blog in tech writing, and then
Hmm.
you ventured into YouTube as well. So, like, did anyone advise you to venture into YouTube, or you were just like dabbling with it on your own?
No, so I think YouTube in 2010 wasn't a big thing, not in India at
Exactly, that's
least,
why I'm
right?
asking. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
why. That's why I'm
yeah.
asking too.
So I think YouTube really started picking up in India in around 2015, 2014, 15, because I think the Geo launched in 2016 or 2015, 2016. That's
Yeah,
when data became cheap in India,
free.
right?
It
And
became
that's
free for a
almost
while.
almost free. Yeah, yeah. It was free
Yeah,
for a while. And that's when, the explosion happened, the video content
yeah,
explosion. That was like the first explosion. And then the bigger sort of an explosion or the bigger proliferation of video content happened during COVID, right?
yeah,
That's when everyone sort of started watching YouTube and
yeah,
Instagram for that matter.
yeah.
So, so I think around in 2015, my teammate, my Ashish,
Oh,
he
you had a
wanted to do
team.
video. Yeah, yeah. I started building a team in 2013, I would say. So I
Okay,
started writing by my own in 2010.
right.
And then eventually I started hiring people.
How big was your team eventually?
Eventually, I think 15 to 20 odd people we had.
Oh, that's great. In
Yeah, yeah.
where were you based out of?
We were based out of Delhi NCR, Noida.
Okay. All right,
Right.
got it.
So because I was always sort of clear that I want to run it as a business, as a publisher. A lot of
Right,
my peers, yeah, a lot of my peers, they wanted to run it as a blogger only, where they are the ones who's writing,
right,
sort of a tech journalist, right? But in
right.
my case, it was mostly I was the publisher and CEO. I eventually transitioned to that.
Got it.
I
Right.
started as the guy who was doing everything, which
Yeah,
is how most businesses start.
of
And
course.
then
Yeah.
slowly and steadily, I started building a team. I started by hiring, one or two writers and then tested them out. And then slowly, then I would, hire a copywriter. I would hire a social media
Right,
guy. So it was a step-by-step process, but we were able to build a good team eventually. And then,
right,
when we started video, we also hired a video team, video editor and all. So I think, yeah, I mean, so my main guy who stuck with me for many years, he was in Bangalore back then, and he was doing a
okay,
lot of he was doing a lot of things, mainly writing and all. And he only suggested that we should do YouTube because it's picking up. And I said, sure, why
right,
not? Like, if you want to do it, you can do it, no problem. So that's when he started the channel under the GT brand,
Right.
And then I think eventually when Geo launched, we did a video which did very well. It was sort of a speed test comparison between Geo and Airtel and Vodafone. So Geo had just,
Okay.
Geo had just launched, right? And it was slowly sort of spreading its wings, and people were extremely interested in,
Yeah.
how it was. And there was huge
Yeah.
interest around it, if you
Yeah.
remember, right? So we did a speed test, and we did it the way we did it was that Ashish went around the town, Bangalore, and he would go with three phones. And everywhere he would just put those three phones and run the speed test at different locations.
Okay. Okay.
In a cafe, on the
Right.
street, everywhere, right?
Right.
So we made that video in a way that we were going from one place to another. So it was sort of a vlog.
Right.
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 So that was a interesting new concept. Nobody had tried that, and it
Right.
worked very well for us. And that's when we realized that okay, this format,
Right.
video, YouTube, this could work for us. And that's when we started focusing on it. And then eventually, so far the team was remote. Everyone was
Yeah.
remote, including myself. But then in 2015, 16, I took an office in Noida, and I sort of called up most of the team here. I said that, if you want to
Right.
sort of scale this, and especially if we want to do video properly,
Yeah.
uh, that cannot be done remotely.
Yeah.
We have to be together, at least the video team, right?
Exactly.
So a lot of people turned up. They with their bags and baggage, they moved to Noida,
Right.
and then we built an office. We also built a video production studio in Noida.
Right.
Proper soundproofed lights and all. We were one of the
Within
first in
your
India to
office.
do it. No, not the we took a different space and we built it out.
Okay.
Spent a few
Okay.
lakhs to build a proper production
Yeah.
studio.
Yeah.
And so we were definitely ahead of many people you see now, the YouTubers and all, because these
Yeah.
days I think it's more common to do that.
Yeah.
But back then it wasn't common. We
Yeah.
would shoot at different places. We would. I remember JP used to have a Wish Town in Noida, which was so
Oh yeah.
JP yeah.
Yeah.
So they also had that Formula One racetrack, if you remember, in
Yeah.
Noida.
Yeah. Yeah. In near like Yamuna Expressway.
Yamuna Expressway. So that JP company had gone bankrupt. So most of those
Yeah.
flats were unsold. So we would
Exactly.
go there and we would shoot our videos. And we also rented a flat there because it was so quiet.
Yeah.
So
So
we
huge. It's like a
use
whole city entirely.
whole city, yeah. I
Yeah.
hear now it is well made now and people have moved in
Yeah.
there, but it was a ghost town back then.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
yeah, so it was very good for us because we could shoot anywhere. We could
You
utilize
don't
all
need
the background.
soundproofing.
No sound, and nobody was there, no noise, nothing.
Yeah.
So we could shoot on the road. We shot so many videos on the road, and
Yeah.
just so it was fun for us. And then eventually we decided that we should build a studio because it gives us more freedom and flexibility.
Right.
So we sort of build a proper studio, and that's how YouTube picked up for us. And the
Yeah.
blog was already doing well, and so I think one important thing that I would like to mention is that, see, for any kind of content business, if you want to build it out, you do need an audience, right? You need to build an audience. So when I left my job in 2008, I had already gathered the skill set to build the audience, because
Right.
back then, in the world of social media, there were a few sites like Dig and Stumble Upon. I don't know if you have heard of them. Uh,
I've only heard of Orkut, which I've used at that point of time.
Orkut, yeah. Orkut was like the social network, so to
Yeah.
speak, like Facebook. But that times Reddit and Product Hunt were Dig and Stumble Upon.
Okay.
So if your link ends up on the front page of Dig, you would suddenly get a lot of traffic. Thousands of visitors would come on your site,
Right.
and it had a few accounts which were called power users, right?
Okay.
Like if you spend enough time and if you post a lot of stories and
Right.
you network with people,
Right.
then eventually there is a chance of you becoming a power user. And if a
Okay.
power user would submit anything on Dig, 99% of the time it would end up on the front page.
All right.
So, right. So then I actually ended up becoming a power user there.
All
And
right. By contributing.
by contributing, by spending time with people, by basically
Right.
positively contributing to the entire landscape.
Right.
So, and then once I knew that, if I submit my article, it will
Right.
also sort of go big.
Yeah.
And the first blog article which I wrote on my personal blog, I still remember. Back then, even Google Chrome wasn't there. iPhone hadn't
Yeah.
launched. Google Chrome wasn't there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Firefox used to be like,
Yeah.
the
Firefox.
Internet Explorer.
The go-to.
Yeah. Go to, yeah. So it was the alternative, main alternative. So I
Yeah.
wrote an article on Firefox keyboard shortcuts, and I submitted to Dig. It went on the page, and immediately, I had like 20, 30,000 visitors immediately, and eventually 100,000 visitors, and my site crashed. Even though,
Okay.
yeah, even though
That's
I
great.
had set it up in a way to manage the traffic, I
Yeah.
had rented a server in the US,
Right.
and I was, but still it crashed somehow, and I was on call with the people in the US as to what's happening. Eventually, we found out that it was some
Right.
backend thing. So, but that helped because, once I knew how to build an audience and get the traffic to my property, rest of the things fell in place.
Yeah. I think you were
So,
growth hacking before growth hacking was a term.
maybe, yeah, that wasn't the term back then.
Yeah, it wasn't a
All
term
these,
back then. It
uh,
came with
uh,
like I think growth hacking came with the Dropbox experiment that I forgot the name of the guy. He's a very famous guy in the startup Silicon Valley space who
hmm,
launched the free trial hack. Like if you like
acha,
because people were facing a lot of friction like trusting Dropbox as a service. So he was like,
okay.
and they were very sure of their service. They were like, it's a bang on service. It's like people will buy
Hmm,
it once they know what's in it for them. So he launched the free trial, and जैसे आपने बताया, like like
hmm,
visitors boomed, and once they realized the use case, they will started buying it, and that is what made Dropbox to what it is today, and that is what like changed the whole scenario for SaaS companies to come like till
acha. Oh,
today.
very
Like
interesting.
that is where the
Oh,
free trial coming. You should read about it. It's very interesting. It's a whole case study.
oh, acha. So, I mean, basically, Dropbox started it. Drew Houston was the founder, right? Was he the guy who did it, or
No,
someone in his team?
someone else, someone in his team, or someone from his mentors who like suggested that we should try this because the problem statement was that people are not using it. अच्छा बुरा तो
Hmm,
बाद में आएगा. People should use it
hmm,
first. So that is
hmm,
what they figured out. Okay, we need to get people to use it. So they had
hmm.
enough
Okay,
clout. They had probably enough traffic, but they did not have enough confidence from people to buy their
okay,
service. तब तक यही होता था you need to buy it to try it, right? चाहे Adobe
right.
Photoshop हो, चाहे कुछ भी हो, you need to buy it. Like you, चाहे Windows हो,
Hmm,
like whatever SaaS was available back then. So you did not have the या तो free होता था Gmail की तरह कि आप free में use कर रहे हैं या फिर आपको pay करना होता था. So there was nothing
hmm.
in between. That is what that is where the growth hacking came from also. The term
Oh,
growth
very
hacking
interesting.
and the free trial. So you should. It's very interesting. Yeah, there are multiple videos on it. Maybe you can create one
Acha. I will check it out. I will
using
check it
your
out.
experience.
So yeah, I mean, I sort of growth hacked my way into
Yeah,
this world, and so I think yeah. And when I started guiding tech, and there also I used some of these hacks to bring the early
yeah,
traffic. I ended up guest writing for a lot of big sites.
got
I
it.
had a NDTV's editor approached me, and then I contributed to their
Okay,
site. And
got it.
and whenever I would write anywhere, I would always link it to my own
Of course.
articles. And
Yeah,
I would end up, just like you mentioned, free trial, I would end up writing for free for many big sites.
right,
And I would only ask them that I would link to my site. And my
yeah,
byline should have my link, right?
right,
So they agreed. They agreed readily. So I think that's how, the traffic. So basically building distribution, right? Because
yeah,
product, you can, and today building distribution has become much tougher, right? Back then,
exactly.
still, it was still growing, but today it's like, it's become much tougher.
Yeah,
So, but building
100%.
distribution was there in my mind early on. And even back
Right.
then, I understood that if I know how to build distribution to begin with, and obviously the product has to be great, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You cannot have a bad product with distribution
yeah,
that won't work for long.
yeah,
So so then I realized that building distribution is the key. And even on YouTube, when we saw that that geo video worked well, initially I was a little
yeah,
skeptical because YouTube in India wasn't a thing back then. Even
Yeah,
in the US, it wasn't that big, right?
yeah,
MKBHD was a kid back then, right? He was
yeah,
he was
yeah,
making videos as a kid. So
yeah,
he was making videos as a kid,
yeah.
so
All of
and
these
even
carry and like beer biceps and like Mr. Beast,
they,
well, they were genuinely kids. You were right. Like
they were
at
genuinely
that point
kids,
of time.
right? Genuinely kids, and even the phone revolution was just picking up.
Yeah,
The app and
yeah,
phone revolution, it was just picking up. It hadn't like the curve was here, but I think when India really came onto the scene after Geo, that's when
yeah.
we also
Completely
saw,
agree. I
how
keep
big
talking
it can
about
get.
this myself. Exactly. I keep talking about this myself because India is the largest smartphone market for most companies. And I think that was only able to happen because of Reliance's revolution that they brought in. Like, I don't care if they've done anything good or bad after or before that, but this is something that they really
Hmm.
changed. Like, they put us 20, 30 years ahead of our time because of that.
Hmm.
Because a lot of people had not, like, it's a free trial thing all over again. That people had not
Hmm.
experienced or tasted internet in large parts of
Hmm.
the country, and that's when they did. The same thing happened with UPI. Like, people did, like, UPI had been there for half a decade or maybe more, like till 2016. But when people were forced to use it, they realized, okay, how convenient this is. Until then, people did
Hmm.
not even have their bank accounts. Government kept crying, please open your bank account, please open your bank account. They did not have their bank account. They did not have an incentive to. So I think demonetization, regardless of how bad implications it had on people's life, and personally mine also, but it also had a lot of good implications in on the country. Like, it made us go digital first.
These were like definitely crucial tipping points, and I mean, of course, I mean, I have seen it firsthand, like the advent of Geo.
Exactly.
But in hindsight, it was not very evident when it was happening.
Yeah, it was happening. Yeah,
When you're in,
it was like,
you
what is
only
happening? Like, yeah, you
you
don't
only
realize.
realize the impact in hindsight, right? So it
Yeah,
was not very evident that
yeah,
we didn't know that it would get this big, but thankfully we were at the right place at the right time, and we
yeah,
also sort of capitalized on it. We realized, in fact, on our so when the team came to Noida and we started working on it, we did a lot of
yeah,
experiments early on. We made some really interesting videos which you would not find anywhere. Like for some of our early videos, which didn't work to be honest, but we
yeah,
experimented. We made movie style
yeah,
videos in tech,
yeah,
right? Which nobody had made. So we experimented BuzzFeed style videos and all of that. We
yeah.
experimented a lot. And we also realized that we should not mix languages. So we were doing both English and Hindi
Okay,
on the same channel. And
okay,
we realized that, and Hindi had started picking up. So we said that, why not do another channel and just do
yeah.
Hindi on that?
Just
So
diversify
then,
options.
diversify, and this really helped us because when we
Yeah,
diversified it, the English channel became a premium asset wherein the CPMs were high, and we would make more money off it just from AdSense. And the Hindi channel, even though we were not getting good CPMs on it, and CPMs basically, just for your
yeah, yeah,
listeners, it's cost per mille, which basically means how
yeah,
much you're earning per thousand views or impressions.
yeah.
So on regional languages or in Hindi, the the value is low, right?
Yeah.
Because of the purchasing
Of
power
course.
parity of the audience. And so on the Hindi channel, that was low. We were not earning automatically much. It
Yeah,
wasn't at a break-even point, but it grew so fast that we were able to seal partnerships with brands directly. So basically,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah, we were able to have two properties, and both were making money
and do
in two
revenue
different
streams.
ways. Two revenue streams and two,
Yeah,
separate revenue streams. So that worked very well for us, and the blog was growing big. It also we pitched it as a premium asset, and
yeah,
we were probably the only site or blog in India which got referenced to by the likes of Wired and New York Times.
okay,
Also, a lot of GT alumni, a lot of guiding tech staff whom I groomed early on. So basically, the way I worked was
yeah,
I would pick young folks from comments.
right,
Like a guy from Canada, he used to regularly comment on Mac articles, articles on Mac and
yeah,
Apple. So I approached him. I said, "Why don't you write?" So he said, "I have never
yeah,
written." So I said, "You are writing good comments. Why not? You are
yeah,
passionate about it." So he said, "Okay, let me give it a shot." Okay.
yeah,
He ended up writing, and then he wrote regularly. So then, today he is a published author. He has written
That's
for
great.
Fast Company, Wired.
That's great.
He's running his own content agency, and I think he handles Figma's content end to end. So
Okay.
he was one guy. Another alumni ended up. He started at Guiding Tech, but he ended up joining Wirecutter later. Wirecutter got
Okay.
acquired by New York Times, so now he's associate editor at New
Okay.
York Times.
That's great. That's great.
So a lot of GT alumni ended up doing great things. They
Yeah.
graduated from here, and because I worked with writers around the world,
Yeah.
I worked with writers from London, from US, from Australia, even Latin American countries. There was a guy
Yeah.
from Peru who worked for many years with me. He was
Yeah.
very good, and we worked together for many years. Then there was a young chap from China. Now imagine back then, China's internet was far more restrictive, even
Yeah.
far more than what it is today. And
Yeah.
he was a university student in China, and he approached me. He said, I want to write for
Yeah.
GT, and he would send me articles, and I initially asked him, how would I pay you? Because PayPal doesn't work in China, and how.
Okay.
So he figured it out. He had a friend in London. He said, you pay him, and I'll get
Okay.
money from him. And
Right.
we sort of had an arrangement, and then it used to probably take 2 3 months for him to get that money, but he was very passionate. He wrote a lot of articles for GT, and so a lot of these fun experiments in remote work
Yeah. And before
that
remote
happened
work was a thing again.
before
Like
before remote
like you've
work was
tried
in fashion.
everything. Yeah, you've tried
Ha
everything before it was a trend. And that's
ha
really
ha.
beautiful of
Most of these
a
things, yeah.
bootstrapping journey.
It was quite a we did, by the way, we did get a VC term sheet in between.
Okay.
So I sort of ended up, just for the sake of it, applying to an accelerator. I thought, let's see what is it all about. Just because I was
Yeah.
sure that I'm not going to get a term sheet, but they
Yeah.
did a few rounds. It was basically an accelerator in partnership, uh, an American firm and an Indian media house, probably the biggest or second biggest media house in India. They were 50% partner, and the other 50% was a media company in the US. Okay, so they wanted to fund content companies, content and media.
Yeah.
So I applied, they went through a few rounds, and they sent me a term sheet. And so that's when it hit me that, oh my God. So then, I introspected, I spoke with lawyers, I spoke with friends, and then I realized that I probably shouldn't take the money because this is not a rocket ship, right?
Exactly.
I was very, very aware of, the kind of company I'm building,
Yeah.
and, what is the difference between a VC fueled firm versus a bootstrap, and whether my
Right.
company and whether I as a founder want to do this. So when I
Yeah.
introspected, I decided I'm not going to take the money. And when I
Makes sense.
told to them, they were very pissed. The director of the Indian media house, he called me in his office, and he said, why are you doing this? We will have our team behind you and all that. Don't worry, and this and that. But I said, no, no, it won't be fair to you. The
Right.
guy from the US, he was very impressed with the business model and everything. So he separately spoke to me. He said, we could have valued you much higher, but we are in partnership with the Indian firm. So, but
Yeah.
eventually we would like to value you much higher. And later on, I realized when I Googled that person. Initially, I hadn't even Googled these fellas, right?
Yeah.
And this guy, he was very humble. The guy from the US, very
Yeah.
humble, very a thorough gentleman. And
Yeah.
he spoke with me like I was his peer. And later, when I Googled him, I realized that he had been an executive editor of Wall Street Journal and an
Okay.
executive editor of Washington Post, both.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So, like
So
that's a problem with big people, right? You don't understand, like actual big people, you are not acting like big people. You don't
right,
realize
right,
that
the real,
they're that big.
So I realized, man, this guy is a big deal. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And he would just email me that let's meet up, let's have a coffee, and let's talk about it. And I did that.
Yeah.
But a lot of back and forth happened. But I was very clear in my mind that this is not something I should be doing because it won't be fair to anyone involved. It won't be fair to myself, to other VCs, because this is not
Yeah.
going to be a rocket ship. And in hindsight, I think if you look at the path of the content companies from then. Today, if you see
Yeah.
BuzzFeed's valuation, it is nowhere close to what it was valued then, right?
Yeah.
Vice Media sort of, went away.
Yeah.
It is still there, but
Yeah.
it raised a lot of money and it didn't work out for
Yeah.
them. So because content is a very resource intensive, human resource intensive business,
Yeah.
and the traditional VC model requires that it be a business where it is not that human resource intensive. You put in a bunch of line of code and it
Yeah.
should sort of scale. But so I think that's what I realized and I decided against it.
Yeah.
And I do think that it probably was, for good, a decision for good for everyone involved.
Right, because I think you might have lost a lot of sleep over it, building that rocket ship, and you are much more comfortable. I think comfort, like chasing enough, is more important than chasing a lot. So you can always chase a
Hmm.
lot. I think a lot is a rabbit hole. Like it will never end. You will never have a lot. You will always want more
Hmm.
and more and more. But chasing
Hmm.
enough can be set that this is enough, and you need to
Hmm.
school yourself over that. That ठीक है मैं खुश रहूंगा इसमें. So I think that comes from
Hmm.
introspection, like you said, and like your internal values of where you come with. But I know we're over time, so I'm just trying to wrap up like with the final note, like a couple of things. Uh, what so you build it for a decade and then you sold it. So you got some VC term sheets interest also in the process. I'm pretty sure that helped in your sale also when people were buying you out. So they might have realized that okay, this is the value of the business and this is what we're going to pay. So typically, what is the range of acquisition that can be offered for a business such as yourself in any domain, like built over a decade? What was the scale of your business? Part one, like how many visitors did you have on your blog, how many subscribers did you have, and then what is the range of like offers that you could get? How many offers did you get? Did you only get one and that got converted, or did you get multiple offers and then you chose one? How did that go?
Yeah, so let me quickly run you through how companies like these sell and what is generally the valuation. So if it is a service company, like let's say if it's an agency, which is primarily dependent on the people, right? They have no product; they are primarily serving clients. Like
Yeah.
ad agencies get acquired all the time.
Yeah.
The bigger firms acquire them. So generally, the EBITDA multiple is not huge. EBITDA basically, let's say profits, right? So it's basically
Yeah.
sold on a profit multiple, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, either 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x of the profit multiple.
Right.
Generally, that's how it works in a service firm, right? Uh, Ours was primarily a product firm because we
Yeah.
had a blog, we had YouTube channels.
Right.
Although they were heavily dependent on people, okay, they were not software, right? When it comes to software, it is
Right.
more of a product sort of a startup. So the multiple is much higher, right?
Yeah.
But in our case, it was a combination, and we were sort of the business leaned more towards the product because we had an established
Yeah.
product. The blog used to get around 5 million views per month, most of that
Yep.
from the US. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was substantial in terms of the views and also the revenues because we were making a few crores per month, and
Okay.
no, sorry, not per month, per year. And then we also had YouTube, we also had a lot of other things. So then I think so the multiple we ended up fetching, we were able to sort of negotiate a revenue multiple and not an EBITDA
Okay.
multiple. Okay? So we were able to negotiate that, and
Because it was a
uh,
recurring.
it was recurring and we had established products, right?
Yeah.
And it was not like we were dependent on clients. Okay?
Yeah.
So then we sold for a good revenue multiple. And generally, businesses like content businesses, the revenue multiple is generally not more than 2.5x.
Okay.
I'm setting aside the bigger, well-known brands.
Of
The
course.
negotiations happen in a different way in those deals. But I'm
Right.
talking about usual businesses with which do not have a huge PR brand or something like that.
Yeah.
So we ended up selling for a higher revenue multiple, and overall, so the range is very broad. Like it really depends on what the content what the content is making generally, and how much is the recurring revenue, what is the potential, how dependent it is on the people who are running it. So there are, there is no
Right.
standard range as such ki itna hi milega. It all depends on what the buyer, where the buyer is seeing value. So like initially, my buyer, initially they were skeptical ki India, because my buyer was based in the US. They were a US
Okay.
based company. So initially they were skeptical कि India का GT हिंदी लेके क्या करना है. But then they realized कि they could keep the team in India. They could have the same team, right? So
Yeah.
then it all depends. It all depends on the negotiation. It all depends on what value the buyer is seeing. ठीक है.
Right.
The range can go from a few lakhs to a few crores to a few $1 million. So it all depends on the size of the business. But generally वही है कि content businesses में the buyer, you have to make the buyer see the value in the property.
Right.
That's why the deals are very custom in that sense.
Yeah.
Software businesses may there are certain set standards of
Yeah.
evaluation. In content and media businesses, because the perspective matters a lot, the brand also matters a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because based on that, you can negotiate with clients for better payments and all that. I
Yeah.
think all those factors, they sort of come in to the picture. Now, when it comes to offers, basically the buyer approached us, and the COVID had just hit. So I did spoke to a few other people later, but I realized that the person who came to us first, he was he had the best things in mind, because this
Yeah.
company, they really wanted to buy it and grow it. They were not
Yeah.
looking as just acquiring it and leaving it. They were like, we want to grow it. We want the same
Yeah.
team. So that also was a huge factor, because I wanted it to be a clean deal. I wanted it to be a good deal for everyone involved. And
Right.
that's how it happened. The entire team was acquired. They were given bonuses, and their jobs were safe. Nobody was fired. So
Yeah.
that was a big deal for me, because and
100%.
there was right. There were no disgruntled employees, so to speak, after the sale.
Yeah.
So, so that all these things, when they put all these on the table, that's when I decided to go ahead. Because as such, selling wasn't on my mind at that time.
Yeah.
When the buyer came, that's when I started thinking about it.
Yeah.
So I think yeah, that's how it worked out, and the entire IP, all the properties, everything was sold off to them. They wanted me to continue as the CEO. They said,
Right.
whatever money you are drawing as a salary, you can continue to draw it, and why
Right.
don't you continue as the CEO?
Right.
But I had been doing this as a solo founder for 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's bootstrapping a company as a solo founder for a long time. It's not
Yeah.
easy. So I said, it's I deserve a break, and I decided that I'll be
Yeah.
there for the transition phase, but I'll move ahead. So
Yeah.
that's how it worked out.
Yeah. You like surprisingly, you're one of like my few guests who have had a similar journey in terms of M&A. And like I just recently spoke to the founder of Uniscape as well. You might have heard of it. They're also Noida based. It's a digital marketing agency which got acquired by a bigger brand, global brand.
Okay.
I don't know which brand, but they got acquired also. So they also had a similar journey. He's also like, now I'm just figuring it out. I've all like worked for like 15 years of my life, but I know we're over time. I will not take much of your time. Just one last quick thing that you mentioned that your video about Pixel got featured on Sundar Pichai's like keynote when he was presenting it to his global audience personally. So like, and you got handsomely paid for that video license as well. So how did that like what how did that happen? Like can you share the like numbers of that at particular deal at least, or like uh,
I
mm,
they paid me 2 lakhs for 2 seconds of video. For for
that's a
licensing
good average.
the licensing 2 seconds. So basically it was so Google Pixel had just launched, and they sent
Yeah.
us a review unit, and I was like, we should do something different with that. So I took the phone to Varanasi, and there we shot two videos, a cinematic one as well as a review. And it was like
Yeah.
a different kind of a video, not like just a simple phone review. So Google really liked that, and they were making a pixel culture video from around the world.
Right.
So we weren't the only ones. They would pick a video clip from Australia, from you know
Yeah.
all the countries, and I think from India they picked one or two. I don't know. We were a part of
Yeah.
that. pixel culture. So Sundar Pichai showed it off in Google iOS. How pixel is
Yeah.
shaping culture in the world. So,
Yeah.
the licensing agency, they approached us. They said that, we want to license it. And they said that, we are going to pay you this for that. I said, sure, why not? Go ahead. And, so see, here's the thing. I mean, those two videos, they didn't get a lot of views, back then, just a few thousand views.
Yeah.
But if you look at the comments on those videos, every comment is like, wow, what a video. And I
Yeah.
also made money through a different angle, right?
Yeah.
So that's my thing. I have always focused on content quality. Quality is paramount for me, and I have seen that
Yeah.
if you focus on the story, on the quality, maybe directly from the regular stream, you may not be making a lot of money, but eventually you end up making money through other streams,
Yeah.
right? In fact, from this Pixel video, another clip was licensed by a Bollywood director. He used it
Okay.
as a Varanasi montage. He said कि
Okay.
यार इसमें इतना बढ़िया क्लिप है, अब मैं क्या अपना रेड कैमरास ले जाके वहां शूट करूँ, आप दे दो अपना एक क्लिप.
Right.
And
Right.
he was like, कितने पैसे चाहिए? I said, पैसे नहीं चाहिए, आप क्रेडिट दे देना बस.
Right.
So he said, okay, sure, no problem. So
Right.
that happened. So
But
I think,
completely agree with that.
so I think the main motto was that focus on quality, do good work, and in a lot of cases that helped me. This being one example.
I completely 100% agree with your ideology of providing quality first, and that is what I'm trying to live with myself as well. And because I'm not focusing on the quantity without the quality, I'm only focusing. And just to give you a metric of success of quality for me, the podcast that I recorded last year. So I that is why I'm so bullish on it today, because the podcast that I recorded last year are not out of date even today. So when I was sharing the
Right.
clips from those podcasts this year, they got like around 14 clips I shared in month of September, I think, and they got like 5.5 lakh views on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn,
Wow.
not YouTube, not any video first platform, but on LinkedIn. And they got
Wow.
like more than 200 hours, or maybe more, like I think 300 hours of watch time. 1 minute
Hmm.
clips,
Right.
like combined. And that, I think that was
So
a big
I
signal
mean,
for
that's the
me.
power of content, right? You can package it
Exactly.
in so many ways, and
Exactly.
you never know from where you get what opportunity, right? So I think that's the
Exactly.
power of content. If you can make it
Exactly.
well, and if you're able to distribute it well,
Exactly.
don't just rely on, or be too overly dependent on one platform. Just try and use it in
Exactly.
multiple ways. And when you
Exactly.
do that, you never know. Like a piece you did last year, you never know, 3 4 years down the line, somebody sees it, some big guy
Yeah.
sees it, and calls you up and says, "Oh, I really like this insight.
Exactly.
Why don't you come up?" And so this
Exactly.
happens all the time in the world of content,
Yeah.
in the world of podcast, in fact, because you are doing this
Yeah.
in the podcast format. So a lot of people have been doing these podcasts, and I don't know if you know Founders podcast. David Senra, he runs it in the US. You must listen
Okay.
to it. It's a great podcast. All he does is he reads a biography a week and talks about it. Okay,
Oh,
a
that's
founder
interesting.
biography a week. Huh.
Yeah.
So through this podcast, he has ended up connecting with so many amazing people. He ended up
Yeah.
having lunch with Charlie Munger at his house. Imagine,
That's great.
before his death, he went to his
Yeah.
house, and that
Yeah.
was like, the sort of the biggest high point in his life.
Yeah.
Imagine, through content he
Yeah.
connected with all these people, right? And he's
Exactly.
not even speaking to guests, he's just reading
Yeah.
books and talking about it passionately.
Yeah.
So there are many such stories in the world of podcasting. So
Yeah.
keep doing this. I think you are doing great job. the
Yeah.
main the main thing
Thank
is
you.
being consistent, and you are
It
already
means a lot
consistent.
coming from you.
So no, 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 because see, the main thing is everyone can start, but there are very few people who keep on with it. Very few people have that sort of consistency, and very few people are persistent. So I think
Yeah.
that is more important,
We're close
and
to
you are
reaching our
doing well.
50th episode. We're
Oh
close to
wow,
reaching
that's great.
recording our 50th episode. And in the last 3 months itself, in September, I recorded 9. In October, I recorded 10. And in this month, I'm already pre booked for 11 videos, 11 podcasts. And we have more
Wow.
to come, like for this month.
Wow.
And it's only
Wow.
growing month on month, but I know we're over time. But thank you so much, Vijay, for coming on today's podcast. I really, really had a lot of fun personally speaking with you. I think there's a lot of value in this episode. And I hope to speak with you again and reconnect with you and get because I have a lot more questions for you. I think
Sure.
we'll save that for another podcast recording. But thank you so much for coming on
Sure.
today's episode. I would just stop the
Thank you.
recording now.
Thanks, Osama.